This is the site of a sunken World War II German seaplane on the island of Iraklia in Greece in the Bay of Alamina. This German seaplane is an Ardo AR-196, which is a lightweight two-seater single-engine seaplane. During World War II, this airplane was part of the German Air Force, and these types of aircraft were used as reconnaissance for coastal patrols and especially for the defense of the German fleet. This plane wreck has been in my sights for some time now, and I'm finally able to make it to the island of Iraklia. But at the moment, I'm on the island of Santorini, just over 30 miles from the wreck. And before I head to the wreck, might as well head onto the island of Santorini and see what it's like. When it's just me and the dinghy, I can get her planing and cruise at about 16 knots. So this 4-mile trip takes me about 15 minutes. Once arriving to the island of Thera, it's a climb straight up about 600 feet, or 200 something meters. That's where I came from right there, 4 miles away, and way down there at sea level. It's a trek up here, for sure. In the middle of the caldera of Santorini, there's these two little islands that from afar look kind of just like normal barren islands. But when you get close to them, you realize that they're basically just a pile of rubble. They're not really a cohesive rock. It's more just a pile of boulders. On the southern island, there is this hot spring, which is not really hot. I mean, it's technically a hot spring because the water coming out is warmer than the seawater, but the water temperature is still quite cool, and it's very muddy. Reality is so different for each of us. Here I am able to hop from island to island, seemingly outside of the whole system, like an outsider looking in, seeing little snippets of what modern civilization is like, but then also being able to traverse the same landscape that humans have been traversing for thousands of years. Me sailing from island to island, relatively speaking, I do it basically the same way as the ancient Greeks did. The landscape is the same. Alright, here we go. Even though we have all this modern technology in the current civilizations, the general landscape and geography is the same. And so I'm able to traverse the same world in basically the same way that the ancients traversed this country. But it's also not even remotely the same. And that's because of time. The hippies will be like, time's not real. Time is just a concept. And I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you, but also things age. Sea Jets is a company of ferries, and they specialize in very fast ferries. This one is their Champion Jet number 2, which can cruise at speeds of 40 knots. So what it takes me 6 hours to do, it can do in 1 hour. And it can carry cars and tons of people. That's so crazy. The now seems to move across, to us, a seemingly linear path, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop for any of us, and that's one of the great benefits of time, but also one of the really terrifying things about it is that it just keeps moving on whether you wanted to or not. It doesn't care. It just keeps moving. Now we experience it in different ways. Sometimes we experience it faster, and sometimes we experience it slower. Sometimes time flies and sometimes time drags, but the change is constant. I just dropped anchor at the backup anchorage that I had just in case the first anchorage didn't work out. The swell was just rolling straight into the first one, and it was pretty small. This one, I thought we could kind of tuck back in here, and it does tuck us out of most of it, but The swell's still rolling in here, so the wind should die, so the swell should roll out. It shouldn't be too bad. We'll see how it goes. Definitely been in worse. Alright, let's go check to see if the anchor's set. I'm bearing down on it right now. Yeah, it feels solid to me. When St. Augustine of Hippo was asked, "What is time?" he replied with, "I know what it is, but when you ask me, I don't." There was no wind in the forecast, but 7, 8, 9 knots showed up, so sailing at like 3.5 knots. Might as well. Time is something that is difficult to get perspective on because it's a subjective experience. And when you're absorbed in life and engaged, then time is inconsequential. It's not something that you're even thinking about or you even notice. When you're really engaged in life, it seems like time doesn't even exist. And so I find it fascinating, the juxtaposition of living in the now while exploring places of ancient origin and of forgotten times. This plane crashed after a battle with British aircraft in September 1943. This plane was shot down, but its crew was rescued. In October 1982, 39 years later, some fishermen got this aircraft tangled in their nets at a depth of 91 meters. Those fishermen dragged it to this bay and were able to untangle it from its nets. And now, this is where it lays. It lies at the bottom of the sea as a relic of a time that many people never even think about, a time when getting in planes and battling in the skies was a normal part of some people's life. For those two pilots, this was their ship, this was their craft that kept them alive, flying through the air, battling their enemies, until it didn't, until they crashed, landed in the middle of the sea. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then consider subscribing, and if you really love what's coming out on this channel, then maybe consider supporting this content on Patreon. And you can find the link in the description below, or there should be a link popping up on the screen. Big love, and have a great week.